Welcome back. Now, Namibia's leading opposition presidential candidate, Panduleni Itula, has announced that his party will not recognize the result of the country's controversially extended election. Speaking just before polls closed on the final day of voting, Itula, leader of the Independent Patriots for Change, accused the process of being marred by chaos and alleged foul play. He noted that regardless of the outcome, the IPC shall not recognize the result of this election. He further stated that his party would pursue legal avenues to nullify the election, urging President Nangolo Mbuba to convene an emergency cabinet meeting to address the situation. The election marks a critical juncture as the IPC seeks to challenge the 34-year rule of the Southwest Africa People's Organization. Now, joining us to discuss this development is writing fellow African Liberty, Uendjii Kandanga. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm hoping I got that right. Did I get that right?
Close enough.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us. So I'd like to know, has the Electoral Commission of Namibia responded to allegations of foul play and also organizational failures, or do you think their response can alleviate concerns that have been raised?
So they have responded after a lot of pressure from journalists and just from the people on social media especially. And because at first they were denying that the shortcomings were a ruse and everything, but then they released a statement saying that basically saying what had happened and why it happened. So like, for example, they were saying not enough papers because they were providing them at certain regions, so they weren't really accepting their faults, they were excusing them.
So the election, did you notice any irregularities or inconsistencies in the voting process as has been raised by the opposition? And if you did, how were they addressed?
Well, yes, because actually it was even published in the newspapers here that someone was found with two voting cards, duplicates, with different voting numbers, but it's the same identity. So, and then people were wondering how was this possible, because the registration process was supposed to be, seamless, and it was supposed to be tight, in terms of avoiding duplications, and because this could lead to someone voting twice and enabling one party to have more results. But that was identified, of course. I don't know how that happened. I don't know what they're doing about that. Other irregularities were just the fact that the machines weren't working. Some of the mobile polling stations left before people could actually cast their votes, and people were in the queues for long hours. I was in the queue from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and that is quite a long time, just to mark two X's on two papers. You shouldn't be in line for hours, So yeah, those were some of the things that I experienced, and yeah.
So in the recent years, social media has played a very big role in elections, especially when it comes to disinformation. So I'm wondering if disinformation played in the elections via social media, using the platforms of social media, and how did the ECN and other stakeholders address these issues that might have been raised?
Okay, so I didn't particularly see any disinformation, but the ECN, so people were trying to get a hold of the ECN and trying to ask them questions of what were you doing for 5 years, or because you're supposed to prepare, because we have elections every 5 years and they only take place on one day. So people were under the assumption that you are preparing for this one day for 5 years. So what were you doing this whole time for this to be such a fail? And so those are the things that people were sharing on social media and calling the ECN to actually speak up against this. And the ECN did respond. At first, they were refusing and denying, and then eventually they did release on the social media platforms of what they are doing to correct the situation.
So how does Panduleni Itula's rejection of the election results reflect the broader concerns about the electoral process and the potential irregularities that he mentioned?
I think a lot of people stand by him, because a lot of us were not happy with the way the results, the elections were carried out, and the results that apparently they show. So he does have a lot of people's backing with him in that regard, and even a lot of people were discouraged from voting because on Wednesday not everyone got to cast their vote, and then we had to ask for the extension, which we got for the Friday and Saturday. So yeah, I think Panduleni Itula does have a lot of people backing him up because we do all have the same claims of the unfairness, the irregularities, and just the allegations of corruption that preceded this whole thing.
Uendjii Kandanga, thank you very much for joining us on the news this afternoon.
Thank you.